Hello, everybody. Welcome at the GreenTech podcast. My name is Jeannette Boer, and I will be your host this episode. We're going to talk about plastics and alternative packaging today. And we record this episode during the GreenTech exhibition in Amsterdam. And we have two guests joining us today. So welcome, Johan. Welcome, Shaun.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Welcome. Yeah, thank you for joining this conversation. Yeah, before we start, it would be great if you can first of all give us a kind of snapshot of who you are and what your company is doing.
Okay, well, I'll start. I'm Shaun Herdsman. I work for a company called Modiform. We make plant pots and trays and bedding packs for horticulture.
Yeah.
Mainly out of plastic, but we do have some alternatives. I've been working for the company for the last 14 years. Mainly in the UK, but last few years I've been taking a more European role as well.
So you know a lot about the subject. It's good to have you here. Huh?
Thank you.
Thank you. Johan.
My name is Joan Hanegraaf. I'm the CEO of the Oerlemans Packaging Group. We produce flexible films for packaging, but also for horticultural applications. We have 6 companies, all producing plastic packaging and films.
Okay. Well, 2 experts here, so we've got a lot to talk about. Well, I want to start with plastic once was kind of a revolutionary material, right?
Yeah, still is.
Still is, but it turns into a kind of symbol of environmental pollution. And there's a demand for alternatives. So I'm wondering, how do you both look at these developments around plastics?
Started really when it came into the public. When David Attenborough had his program, and they showed all the plastic in the ocean. That obviously didn't just magically appear. It's been gathering for the last probably since plastic started, and then the attitude towards plastic, or the public perception towards plastics, has completely changed. So the last year and a half has been extremely interesting, challenging for our business because we use a lot of plastic, and we are selling to growers who are using the plastic, and then eventually the plants with the plastic, with the pots and the trays, end up at the retailers, and the retailers are under a lot of pressure from the consumers to either change away from plastic or use the right plastic that is more recycled or potentially has a better chance of being recycled.
So as a plastic producer, how do you look at these developments? How's it for you?
Well, at first, I guess it was a bit scary because you think, oh, where is this going to end? But we've actually seen a lot of opportunities in this by doing research about what happens to the plastic, where it goes, and what plastic gets recycled. Currently, through existing recycling systems, we've managed to be able to change some of our plastics so that they have a higher chance of being recycled, and we've actually gained a lot of business because of it. And we've also introduced a range of non-plastic packaging items, which we introduced about the same time as David Attenborough's program was launched as well. So we had a bit of luck there, but that's increasing slowly, though. Slowly.
So it's challenging, but you also see it as an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can get it right, there's still opportunities out there.
Yeah. And Johan, same question for you. How do you look at this?
Yeah, the problem is if we have a plastic problem or we have a behavior problem.
Explain.
I think that plastic wins from every alternatives. On carbon footprint, on food, on hygiene, on shelf life. But it should not end in the environment. And some of the products end in the environment. And that's why we start a battle against plastics. But also recycled plastics that ends in the environment is also a disaster for the environment. If you throw all the glass on the street, then it's also a disaster. If you throw all the cans into the ocean, they sink to the bottom, you also have a problem. So what we are trying to do with all kind of stories, because we believe all those stories. And I must agree, it does not have to end into the ocean. But only 5% of all the garbage is floating. And I call it Titanic politics. So we concentrate on the 5% that is floating. And everything that sinks to the bottom or disappears, like paper, you don't see it anymore. Is the problem bigger or is the problem smaller? In my opinion, the problem is bigger, because what you can't see, you can't solve. So we concentrate now on 5% of the material that is ending into the ocean because of collection from countries, throw it in the environment, etc. So I think there should be a change in behavior with all the products, because tin, glass, paper, wood, everything has to end in the environment.
But is the pollution of paper and glass, is it as big as the pollution of plastics?
It's the glass. We have, of course, a recycling, but it's not only the single-use plastic or that it ends up in the ocean. We also have a discussion on climate. And if you see that a paper bag, you have to use 43 times for the same carbon footprint as a plastic bag. If you go to a cotton one, it's 2,000. So we also have a discussion on heating up the earth. So we have to look to the total program, to the total solutions, and don't say, okay, we stop with a disposable is forbidden or a balloon is forbidden, because there are thousands of products. And what we see now, and also the journalists and also politicians, think when we have one product or two products and we stop with that, we solve the problem. But your clothes, your shoes, your car, everything, your computer, everything is made out of plastics. When it ends up into the environment, because it is lighter than water, so I think that's an advantage of your plastics, it's lighter than water, then you see the problem, you can get it out of the water and you can solve the problem. But if you don't see it anymore, how to solve it? So the problem is much bigger and more complicated than only single-use plastic, or it ends up in the environment. And I think the journalists and the politicians are not very strong in seeing the total problem.
What do you think of that, Shaun?
I agree that there's a problem with the plastics getting into the oceans, getting into the natural environment. But I also think that there's a big problem with the recycling system as well. So although all this plastic gets into the home waste recycling systems, is it recycled? And I think a lot of it isn't recycled. A lot of it is either put into the ground or sent off to different countries, and we don't actually know what happens to it. And from there, potentially it goes into the ocean, or still, even if it gets into the ground, it's still going to be a problem, somebody else's problem, maybe in the future.
Yeah, but why is the recycling system not that good as for other materials?
Because of financial aspects, money. If we look at the food packaging industry, they use certain materials. And the food packaging industry is the biggest. So we're in. I like to focus on horticulture because we're in horticulture. Yeah. So our packaging, our plastic use is quite small compared to food and bottles. Mm-hmm. So the recyclers focus on the material that they can collect the most of.
And that's in the food industry.
The food and the bottles. So all the systems are geared up. They've invested in collecting that type of plastic, and we're not always using that type of plastic. So they don't look for it. They just reject it straight away. Some of it.
They reject. Also, if you want to recycle, they reject it.
If it goes through the home collection waste systems, for instance, if we look at actual horticultural packaging, what Modiform does, plant pots, bedding packs, and trays. That's the main three. If we look at trays and bedding packs, traditionally we make them out of black, which is not seen by the scanners in the recycling system. But we also make it out of polystyrene, which they're really not looking for. The pots, actually, they're made out of polypropylene, so they're looking for polypropylene, but if we use black polypropylene pots, they can't see it at the moment. They can't see them, so they get rejected as well.
So if the horticultural materials come into the consumer waste industry or recycling industry, then it won't be detected. And
if it's black and polystyrene, it won't be detected. And if it's a different colour and it's polypropylene, like plant pots are, then it has a chance of being recycled Nothing's guaranteed. I know in the UK, I've the most experience of the UK.
Yeah.
In the UK, there's only 10% of local authorities that will actually accept plant pots. The rest of them don't accept plant pots.
Who's responsible? Where is the responsibility for this problem?
I think it's a mixed responsibility. As producers, we can take some responsibility by maybe changing the type of plastic that we use to produce our products. But it's a big change in horticulture, because we've been doing this for the last 35, 40 years with the same types of plastics. But also the recycling industry we have to aim towards a circular economy. So they have to change their ways. They have to recycle more plastics. And I think Johan will maybe tell you about the politicians.
No, if you first look to responsibility, I think first we have as producers, we have a responsibility. I signed with all the companies the clean sweep operation.
Yeah,
So
what's that?
That means that you take care that not one granulate will end into the environment. So first look to your own factory and take care there's nothing going into the environment. There it has to start. Then the products we recycle already internally with our factory over 30 years, so that is not new. We make all kinds of products which we can recycle, and also black you can recycle, and black can also be detected, because if you look on a black product on a black belt, it's difficult. But if you look on the side, you can see it and you can recycle it. So that is a misunderstanding, and I fight against this misunderstanding, because if you want a circular economy, all the products will end as black. So also
Why you need black to recycle?
The reason is when you have a transparent film,
Yeah.
and there is a printing on it, you started to recycle, it's not transparent anymore. So it's getting more colors in it, and at the end it will end as a black product. If you look at the products, your products that are in the market, are all black products, because you have some carbon black, put it in, and then you are quite sure it's 90% or 95% is recycled material. So, and also in Holland, they tried to forbid the black materials, and I said, okay, but we want a circular economy, but we forbid the black products. So there will never be a market. No, then there will be never a market. So you will never close the loop. So
So actually, you only need machines and detectors that can all detect the carbon black, or is that
technical?
It is a technical problem, but it's a practical problem that is not solved at the moment. Yeah. So black still isn't getting recycled now.
So there's also a big challenge there, or a big solution there. If it can be detected everywhere.
Yeah, Johan's right. It does all end up to black.
So, but technically, this is possible, but still, it does not have to end in the environment. So first, we are responsible as manufacturers, but also producing alternatives, taking care that we can recycle it, that we collect it, etc. So I think that's our first responsibility. Then I think one of the most important responsibilities is for everybody in this world, take care that it does not end into the environment. Because if I would say as chairman of the Dutch Federation, okay, everybody who is working in our industry, from now on, we throw all our glass on the street. Is there then something wrong with glass, or is there something wrong with the behavior from our industry? I think something wrong with behavior. So we have a behavior problem, and we are responsible for that behavior problem. Of course, we are responsible for our own behavior problem. The consumer has a responsibility, and the politicians, and I've been in a lot of countries. Most of the countries, they do not collect the waste. If they do it, they do not recycle it. They throw it somewhere in the river or whatever. So a lot of governments are responsible for the waste in the ocean. And that is something I do not understand. They forbid a balloon, but they throw their own garbage into the environment. So I think in Europe, we have to decide that nothing should end in the environment. And also the other countries, but let us keep it at the European Union. I don't know if you will stay with us with the after the.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope too.
That's another discussion. We could do a podcast about that. Huh?
I think in Europe we have a bigger responsibility than only forbidding a few products. And at the first, from the 10 products, also ladies' hygiene was also under discussion. Eh? So our politicians want the ladies in Europe back to the Middle Ages. That's also single-use plastics. So it's more than a balloon or a stock or a disposable. So, and you cannot solve it with saying it 3, 4, 5 products we are going to forbid and then, okay, we save the world, because we are not going to save the world in the way we run our countries now.
So how are we going to save the world?
Collect, separate, techniques are going. I read an article from somebody, is a professor at the University of Amsterdam, and he said, okay, you can better burn the plastic than throw it in the environment. And I agree on that. You should recycle. But what we do now, we heat with fossil energy. Mm-hmm. And plastics are made from fossil resources. Then we make a plastics. And then we are not able, don't let us burn that. But the energy in plastic is exactly the same than in oil or gas. So why don't you use the heat for thermal recycling, that you bring in everything and say, okay, every percentage that I use on plastics, I don't have to use it for fossil energy. Till, of course, we have sun energy, wind energy, but 96% of all the fossil energy, of fossil resources is energy. Only 2% goes in packaging. And we are not allowed to use the caloric value of the plastic. And if you would use it as heating, but also in the third world, that you say don't throw it in the environment. Here you have a heating, use it to heat make electricity from it. And that is something that they don't want to discuss about that.
Yeah, but looking at a long-term solution, is there...
It's only 2% of the world energy is packaging. And we all concentrate, so I think 50% we cannot even recycle, because technical it has no value or it has a value. But the environmental impact is bigger than the advantage.
But if you can't recycle like 50% of the plastic...
No, let's say 50%.
But okay, we take that as a number, 50%. Yeah. If you can't recycle 50%, and then there's coming more and more and more plastics in the world, right? Yeah. Then that never stops. So
that's why that 1% you can use as energy. Then it will not end in the environment, and otherwise the 1% what you use now for energy, you use now for fossil applications. So every percentage you use from packaging, you don't have to use it as the fossil energy. Yeah, you're still with me?
Yeah, no? Kind of, but I don't know. I'm not sure. What do you think of it, Shaun?
I think it's probably a short-term solution. It's certainly not a long-term solution, because fossil fuels are not finite. We don't have an endless supply of them. So.
And in 2050, it's like we should be.
Yeah, but it's very
without,
simple.
Right?
Now we make plastics from the fossil energy, but we make it already from starch, from sugarcane. We already produce film from sewage sludge. So you go to the toilet, and we can use that, and we can make plastics from that. So there are a lot of sources to make plastics. So if you make from sewage sludge, you make a plastic, and that plastic you use to burn it for energy. What's wrong with that?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, there's some great solutions, but I like to look at what's happening right now with horticultural plastic. I know your agenda is probably a little bit bigger than mine, but I looking at what's happening now, and it's good that you're lobbying the governments and everything, and I agree that we do need a longer term solution. But we also have to tackle things right now, because it's you wouldn't believe the amount of tons that are just in the world.
I agree on that, but I'm a horticultural engineer. I started in 1902 with the development of biodegradable plastics. Nobody ever heard about biodegradable. I did my master's degree on circular economy, closing the loop, in 1996. So I did my master's at Henley, Brunel University, and my study was on circular economy. So I'm busy almost 30 years with bio-based economy and circular economy. Our products go all over the world for mulch film. So after the crop, you put it into the soil and it will degrade. So for horticulture, we have the solutions. But it's not only horticulture, there's a whole world of plastics. And you cannot take only your product out of it. You have to see that in the total concept, and you have to solve it with all the products that are made of plastics or other materials.
Yeah, but they have to find them first.
They are there.
Yeah,
the technique is there.
Yeah,
you can do it.
but they don't do it. So
And
they don't
biodegradable
look
is
for it.
not a solution for all horticultural products, right?
Yeah, but
or what do you think of that?
I think
Shaun?
there's another long-term solution, which is a chemical process that breaks
feedstock recycling.
Yeah, that breaks the plastic back down to its elements, and you can just recreate plastic from it.
Yeah.
And that's they're developing that now. They're trying it out. I think there's one in the UK. So you can take basically all plastic waste and bring it back down, and then you can create the same plastic again, and it's a clean plastic. It's virgin plastic.
Yeah.
So back to the same question I asked to Johan. What is the solution, you think? How can we save the world? How will the future look like?
Well, we're going to have some drastic changes. I mean, if we're looking at carbon footprints, probably plastic is probably not the first thing that we should look at. But there's lots of other things where we can change and help to reduce the carbon footprint. But we have to deal with what we can deal with. We can't always do such big things to save the world. So I know as a company, we can change our materials, we can be flexible with what we use to give it more of a chance of being recycled. And that's what we do. And we've also looked at alternative materials, because we don't always know. In Europe, we're pretty good at collecting the waste. Although it's not perfect, we're still really good at it compared to other countries. But we send plants out from the Netherlands all over the world. And we really don't know what happens to the plastic there. So we've created alternatives to plastics. So we've created a moulded cardboard waste tray. And then at least we know something will happen to it, whether it can be burnt, it can be recycled, or if it gets into the natural environment, it will just disappear.
Okay. And will that be the future solutions, you think?
I don't think there's one particular solution that will solve everything. I think we'll have to have different combinations of solutions, because it's such a big issue, a complicated issue, that we can't just all change to one type of polymer and then we can have a circular economy working on that one type of polymer.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. But if we look at our own products and where they end up, then we can choose the right materials for each individual situation.
To my opinion, the solution is very simple, because all the solutions take many years. But I'm a very simple CEO, but I always say, when you don't cause problems, you don't have to solve them. So if we take care that it does not end in the environment anymore, then you also have time. If you have a plastic, you can recycle it now, but maybe in 2 or 3 years you can stock it, and you recycled or feedstock recycling or thermal recycling or whatever. But what we are still doing, and I think everybody jumped on Greece because they did not have the finance very correct. Okay, it's not good, but I've seen in Greece that they had with bulldozers, they have the collection and you just put it into the Mediterranean. And then you are sure that you get waste in the ocean that is going to float. Nobody's telling to those countries, you should not throw it in the sea. So in my opinion, stop putting it into the environment and punish the people who do it. And if me as here in Holland, or you in the UK, when you throw something into the environment, you have to pay a real amount of money that you only do it once. And also the governments should be punished when they throw it into the environment. But there are a lot of countries in Europe, they just throw it in the environment or in the sea. And then we are discussing to forbid 1 or 3 products. So if you don't cause a problem, you don't have to solve it.
Yeah, it is a bit crazy that we've banned certain products that are tiny items in the environment. But I don't think that individuals are causing so much trouble for the world if you throw something out of your pocket into the ocean. I don't think that's the big problem. It's wrong. They shouldn't do it. But I think, like Johan says, the governments need to do something. But that it does include the UK and the Netherlands and Germany.
Every country.
Because we ship everything. We ship a lot of it out into other countries. And maybe not so much now with the home side recycling product, but industrial waste that gets shipped out because the authorities don't have so much
ship out to Asia and they
control
have to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
I agree that's completely wrong, and I am happy that those countries closing the borders now. Because that's not sustainable.
Because it's not a solution.
Absolutely
Yeah, it's
sustainable.
crazy. Yeah? So there are different types of plastics, right? And isn't it also part of the problem that the consumer doesn't know, but when it's not sorted well, then it's also not recyclable? So there's also a big problem there.
That is one of the main problems, because we have many kind of packaging, but also paper with plastic, paper with aluminium, but a plastic that looks like a paper, etc. And the problem is indeed that the consumer does not know, is this paper, is this plastic, what kind of plastics? That makes it extremely difficult. One of the reasons, and we developed biodegradables in '92, and we never started with biodegradable in packaging because you don't see the difference. So if you want to do it in the bag for degradation, they say, okay, we don't take it because there is plastic in the, and we don't take it. And if you put it in the collection system for plastic recycling, then it's damaged the recycling. So that is one of the main problems that makes it extremely difficult. And that's
for the consumer, plastic is just plastic.
Yeah, that's true. And I think I'm quite a specialist, but I sometimes have to look: is this paper? Is this coated? Is this high density? Is this all kind of plastic? That's true.
I think I don't think we can rely on a consumer to make that decision. I think the decision needs to be taken away from the consumer.
To whom?
To the systems, to the recycling systems. The technology is there to sort out the material. But then it comes down to finances. They look for what they can sell at the highest price. But the consumer shouldn't look at the bottom. At the bottom of most plastic packaging, there's the polymer number.
But then actually it's price that causes the environmental pollution.
It's all down to price.
I've got actually one last question. We're going to the end, guys. I'm looking at time and it's time to end almost. But actually, I would like to have a last word or advice to the growers, because there are probably growers listening, and I can imagine there's so much information for them and so much different paths and options, and actually a changing demand from retailers, changing demands from of consumers. What's your advice? How can they respond to that? What's the best way to respond to that or to act for them?
I think we must have the guts just to tell that we are doing the best thing that we can do. And now we are finding alternatives that there are no alternatives. If you grow on in horticulture on films, on substrate, then you can't have a better way to run that. And the grower has to look the best way. His carbon footprint. He's using fertilizers, he's using energy. So that whole concept must be correct. It's not only the film, it's everything in his glass house or in his growth. So he has to look to everything. And also the big stores, demand a lot of things, but they will not pay 1 cent more. And if we lose it on carbon footprint, or we lose it because we have the raw materials, the sources from fertilizers will be a problem in a few years, because in a few years we have 10 billion people to feed. So we cannot let it happen that we lose a lot of resources. And also the grower has been very keen on that. So he just has to do what the best. And I had a discussion yesterday with a very big grower. And he said, I do it my way, I do it the same way. I think that the best way is. And when somebody can tell me that I have to do it in a better way, I will listen. But there are no better ways. You cannot grow tomatoes on paper, or on glass, or on metal.
Thank you. Shaun?
And well, if I look very specifically at our 3 main products, plant pots, bedding packs and transport trays, I would advise the growers to see what they're using. Make sure they understand the materials that these products are made out of, and then listen to their customers to see what they're asking for. And if they're selling into the UK, they need to consider if they're using black plant pots that maybe they need to change the colour. It's simple. but it will increase the recyclability because the recycling systems are not looking for black. Bedding packs, it's even more specific. It's not perfect, but if we change from black PS to a transparent green PET, and I won't go into the technical details about why, but it increases this recyclability. And then transport trays, if they're going to responsible retailers around Europe, we don't actually need to change because they should be recycling them. However, I know they don't get recycled. I know that they get baled up and sent to other countries. So then we can also look at alternatives. And if we know that the plants are going to countries where they don't have such responsibility with the waste, then we also have to look at plastic alternatives as well.
Thank you. I feel kind of the joint message, like reuse, reduce, recycle, renew. Is that correct?
Redesign, rethink.
Redesign, rethink.
Yes, the 6 Re's. Rethink, reuse, reduce, recycle, renew, and redevelop.
Well, let's end with that. Thank you for joining this conversation.
Thank you.
The next GreenTech will be 8 till 10 June next year, 2020. It starts on a Monday till Wednesday.
Yeah.
So I hope I will see you there, and we can. I hope there will be nice new developments in this discussion.